Welcome, everyone. I'm Angelo Robles to the Angelo Robles podcast. I'm also the founder and CEO at Family Office Association. Today's title is Minuzzi on how young women and men can be successful business creators. Now, because it would be too long of a title, it's going to be more than that. She's an incredible entrepreneur and investor, and the opportunity of from the perspective of an investor, an angel in VC, and her global reach. So it's going to be a very comprehensive discussion, but we'll initially stick to what the core title is focused on. Now, it is, as I noted, Minuzzi, entrepreneur and angel investor. I was introduced to about a year and a half ago. I had a chance to interview her at one of my events, and it was fantastic. And I'm so glad to reconnect and invite her on the show. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you for having me. I had a great experience that day in LA, like joining your event. So I'm glad you've been, and I've been following your very consistent and present work during COVID, during the pandemic. So very impressed to see what you've managed to build, even in times that we cannot see each other like in person. So congratulations for that. It's very important what you're doing.
Well, thank you. It's very kind. I kind of took to the digital world and more of a global reach. And it's been fun, especially on my YouTube platform, which has skewed to economists, macro thinkers, and investors. And this will be a part of that as well. But this will take a little bit of a different approach that I think everyone will also have a chance to benefit from. And on that note, let's get right to it. You have an amazing background coming from Brazil, and at an early age, I believe a teenager, starting a company. And that experience, I got so many questions about it, but I think to set the stage for the audience, why don't you talk a little bit about that, your earliest entrepreneurial experience and why you did it and what you learned from it?
Okay. Yeah, I started very young. Still in Brazil, I became an entrepreneur in Brazil, and I was 13. First time I got interested like in building my own thing, but I would say 15 when I really like launched my first company, which was in fashion, nothing related to what I do today, but was a great experience. And I think it's just like that entrepreneurial blood, like my parents are doctors, so I had no guidance at home of like how to go that path. And as a woman, I think fashion was the most obvious thing, especially when you're 15. Like that's pretty much the only exposure you get in business, like you buy clothes and that's it. And especially like in Brazil, it's not like kids these days that have exposure like to all the technology and things that we have. So it started like that. I was always driven by purpose. I didn't know at the time, but like looking back, it was very clear to me, like all the fashion clothes I would do only with organic textiles, which no one cared at the time, but it was very important for me. And that's why I started exporting very early, because like Europe and other places, even Mexico, they cared more about the concept I had for fashion than Brazil. It didn't last long. Like I stayed in fashion business until I was 20. And then when I was 20, I got obsessed about finance, because for me it was so hard, so challenging to thrive in business with the line of credits that had such a high interest in Brazil, that I started like, okay, like how do I really make it happen, how I make it, and it was always related to finance. I could be selling amazingly, but the cash flow was so unfair with me, I would say. So I had to rethink. And that's when I was 20, I closed the fashion business, didn't sell, nothing like that, just literally closed and switched my career to the investment world. And then I went straight to real estate, again, because of my purpose. Like we were just getting started doing like low income houses in Brazil. Before that, we only had slums and favelas, right? And I saw an opportunity of like helping the community and bringing investors to that world, which again was like very weird for like a 20 years old woman in a very sexist country, like to be thinking about investments and at the same time like something that would make a difference. But it just like helped me a lot, because returns were great and I connected with the project so easily because it was dear to my heart. So it was like very easy to sell something that I could see the need, and I think that's what made my first successes in business, just like doing from my heart, while having a very analytical mind, very sharp for that as well.
Sure. Why don't I go back to, again, you're 15, you're kind of starting the fashion business, and I'm assuming this is something you probably did on a, on a shoestring. It's not like you were given, here's 25 or 50,000 American dollars, go and start. So you had to basically start something from nothing with no experience of entrepreneurship. Your parents are doctors, and it's an advantage with your education and some resources, but they're not entrepreneurs per se. So I'm not going to necessarily ask you what made you want to do it, but how did you realize, how did you learn the process, and did you become profitable? Did it take a year? Did it take 2 years?
It took years, because I was under the illusion that because I was selling so much, that I was profitable, in the sense of like, oh, especially because the payments happen like this, like you sell the whole collection to like a fashion brand, and they will pay you like 30, 60, 90, 120 days later, but you pay everyone beforehand. So the textiles, you start like paying like a way before you even show to the buyers, and then all the work, the staff, it's like a lot of expenses all the time. So I was like, oh no, I spend so little, although it's upfront, and I make so much that I'm doing well, but then as the interest from the line of credits that I would get were extremely high, and at the end of the day, I would see, I was like, oh wait, this is the cost of money in this time, and I'm not making any money. I'm just like really working to happen. And in Brazil, it's kind of global, but in Brazil, they have the very clear data. Like most of, I think it's, I don't remember from my mind, but let's say like 80% of the companies die on year 3. So I always like, I will survive until year 4, and I'll show that. And they would say like business normally become profitable only after year 3. So I had those kind of goals, and thinking like, oh, I'm the standard business, small business, and I'll get it there. So I was not super concerned, but the numbers were not making sense to me. And that's when I started like, how do I make sense of this? How do I get better terms? How do I sell better? And then I realized that most of people, they started with more cash than just intention, and they wouldn't rely on line of credits to really thrive. And then all these small entrepreneurs that I was not a startup. I was not raising funds from like a venture firm that would back me and so on. So it was a way more challenging than other type of business, or if you're coming from like good amount of wealth to get started. So that's why I switched. I realized I needed to have money before really being an entrepreneur from my heart, and that's what the investment world did for me. I learned how to first make money and then start deploying in my own endeavors or other people's like ventures more strategically.
And I mean, I would say a couple of things from that. One, I believe side hustles, we'll get to that shortly. And I know it's unique for my kind of audience, but I believe in theory, those should arguably be profitable from day one, but we'll save that for a little bit later. If I could wave a magic wand, you could go back to your 15-year-old self, and you're still going to start the fashion brand. And I'm not going to give you any extra money. So you can't say, give me $200,000. What would you do differently to have scaled quicker and have had earlier success now that you know what you know?
Well, I love the investment world, and I think everyone should be an investor, because I think that's how you really make it, And if I could go to my young self, especially these days with crypto markets doing like what it's doing, I was just like, stop everything you were thinking of like launching and go first learn about finance and investments, because there's so much content available, and if you are sharp enough to absorb that and start. And the other thing is like, as an investor or as like someone that is not an investor, you always think that investment's too far ahead, that you don't have the money, that you can do. But if you have the patience to start doing it, and that's what happened when I was 20. Although I didn't have the wealth, I was bold enough to go to people and say, I believe in this product. I need your money. I just need like 6 months to show that I'll return. So as we start studying and you become like very confident about something, I think the best way is to work with other people's money until you make your own. And because you were small and it's the chance you have, you'll be way more careful. So you'll be so mindful on bringing those investors in, and you'll be so caring. At least that was my experience. So if I could go back on time, what I started doing when I was 20, I would have started doing like when I was 15. If I was my parents, I would say before venturing in something on your own, learn a little bit more about finance. My parents were never good at finance, so they didn't have that type of guidance, but that's what I would say. First numbers, and then you go with your passion, you know.
And when you transition from just closing your fashion brand to getting involved in finance and real estate, you were probably, I think you said 5 years later. So I'm assuming 19, 20, 21. Did you go to college?
I did, but I'm a dropout. Like I did fashion, I did design, graphic design, and then I did fashion design. First, no, I did fashion design and then I did graphic design because fashion, I was feeling dumb. I was always like a smart kid, and I was feeling like, oh, I study all this history of art and blah, 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 which I love. But my other side of the brain is not being trained, you know, and I felt that I needed to learn more on my own because my choice of university was not serving my needs at the time. So I dropped out, and then I just like started learning as much as I could on my own, and it served me well. And then I did like some like short courses, like, and all these things like Stanford, Wharton, like all the short ones, but I never really graduated or did an MBA per se. So
yeah, we're going to catch up a little bit about that too. In today's world, the value of college, especially someone taking on a lot of debt and not having family resources and looking at $100,000 to $200,000 of debt, and what do they really learn? I'll have some stories about that. So you transition while in college, but eventually dropping out into finance and real estate. And again, if you could go back and have learned that at an earlier age, even, and you were already young, that would have been of value. What was a key takeaway from ingraining yourself in finance and learning how to make real money, how to save it, and how to build and how to invest?
I think the first thing is like how capable we are. You know, we have all these skills for everything we want to do. We just start creating limitations for ourselves at an early age. Like if I was not the best student in math and chemistry and so on, I was just like, oh, I can't touch that. But when you touch that with a different perspective and in a way that you know you will grow, it changes, you know. And I think that's what I started realizing. Like I was just 20 and I already had all this block, just like, oh no, I'm not good in math, I'm not good on this. And then at the moment I was doing for business, business was always like a passion, clearly, right? So when I was doing for something that I really cared, it changed. So like the first thing is like really like taking out all these limitations, and I keep taking out, you know. Now I'm 32 and I still find things that are like, oh my God, why I thought I couldn't, you know, of course I can. It's just a matter of like focusing, you know, being heads down, connecting with people, collaborating, and you can learn anything, you know, you can get it done. Even like, I don't know, there's so many things. And that would be my advice for my younger self. Just like wrap it up, you know, take all these limitations because it's all from your mind.
I mean, I'm looking at what's available now to people effectively for free or near free. And yeah, because I'm pretty prominent on it, maybe I'm talking a little bit about it, but YouTube has tremendous, tremendous resources. There's Teachable, Udemy, there's online platforms that are not going to be free, but be relatively very, very low cost. Oh, and a little something called Google, which makes me question whether information, which is what we learn in school, is really as valuable as what we pay for it. I mean, I think the biggest value of college, unless you want to be an engineer or something like your parents, doctors, is going to be your independence from your parents and your social activity and building your communication skills with people from different backgrounds and cultures. So, I mean, let's get into that discussion a little bit. Unless you want to be an engineer or doctor, et cetera, what really is the value of college, and could we be more self-educated and ingratiate ourselves in being entrepreneurs, immersing ourselves in taking action?
So it's a great question, but it's so hard to say because I love academic people, you know. I love what they bring to the table. I love people that did the traditional path, you know. If you see my team, although I always have like one of our values is being very entrepreneurial. So you can be from a very traditional path in terms of studying and so on, but I still need to see like the entrepreneurial hustle, you know. But it's just hard. Like if I don't have kids, if I had kids and you ask me, like I would like to see them going the whole traditional path, you know, and taking the most of it. But also I would leave them open. And I think that's the key for everyone is understanding like your skills and how you better succeed. Because even for myself, like this year, like the first thing I did January 5th to 15th was another Wharton class for VCs. And it's so not for me, you know. I prefer 100 times, like everything I was learning there, first of all, and not talking badly about the class. The class was great for most of people. I talked to like all my classmates, they loved, but I'm doing this all day long, you know. The types of agreements I get and I negotiate are way more real than what they were teaching me, you know, because they come from the 80s, the 90s, you know, like they come from like another type of VC industry. And it was just like, oh, fuck, this is not very applicable for the way we do the business these days, but good to know that at some point it existed, and maybe I'll come across one of these agreements one day, and I know they exist, you know. But because of that, and I'm being very entrepreneurial, I prefer to just get like 15 agreements that exceeds the standard that are in the industry, and go talk to people that are more senior than myself in the industry and ask like, oh, I didn't get this clause. I don't understand exactly like how it can be diluted this way or so on. So just, I prefer to learn from people that are doing this on a daily basis and in a very informal way, that you just get on a call and go meet, go on a walk, whatever. And that's me. And then I saw the other students, you know, absorbing so well, and I would hire them. And I was like, they're way better than me for this. They absorbed every single word that this like teachers teach them, you know, and I learn in a different way. So I think that's the important thing. Like there's people that will thrive a way better in a traditional setup, and it's not only for doctors, engineers. I think it's for everything. There's just like a lot of behaviors that will fit better that and will show up better in the industry. And there's other people like ourselves probably that we just absorb in a different way, and we teach in a different way, and we do like in a very proactive and connected to like all the information we have, you know. And that's another thing that I didn't say. Like I prove like the same thing of going to a people more senior. I can just go through Google, YouTube, like, and search like the articles that I will trust more, the thinkers I trust more, and learn right away without even wasting their time, you know, getting advice. I can just get it because they already posted. So
I mean, an example, the legendary management consultant, Peter Drucker, if I remember correctly, was, you know, be a creator, know how to market, and know how to sell. If you're doing a business and you're not making a profit, then it's kind of an expensive hobby. Maybe you're learning from it, but you need to generate positive cash flow. So using my son as an example, about 2 weeks ago, he said, you know what I'm doing now in between his schoolwork has been more valuable than what he's learned in school. So a little bit like us, sitting down for 8 hours and hearing lectures and teachers is not his preferred way of learning. So he took a position that's a hardcore sales position, learning how to cold call people, learning how to communicate. And he basically said in like 4 days, he learned more doing that than he did into his 4th year in high school. I don't know if that was kind of an insult to school because we're in a pretty high level school, or simply, again, immersing yourself and getting rejected and learning how to communicate. So again, create, market, and sell. Do you think those are important skills for people?
100%. But that's like a skill any entrepreneur needs to have, right? And I think I was a very shy teenager, and at the moment I needed to sell, as I became an entrepreneur, my life changed, because then it doesn't matter, like you can be shy as a human being, like your parents will respect, your like classmates will respect. You cannot be shy as an entrepreneur, like for even if it's really hard, you know, like you need to push the boundaries and like and go for it. And that's how you become a better communicator, a better salesperson, and so on. And I think just the experience, I think anytime you were selling, you were getting feedback, you were understanding people's thinking, you know, like their behavior. So I love, and I always ask people to get any experience they can selling. Like I would go just like when I was 13, because I always cared about causes, as I said, like there was like this marathon for cancer. I would get like 50 t-shirts from my school, and go knock door to door in my neighborhood just to raise funds for that. And it was just like such a great experience of first being a leader, you know, like, hey, classmates, let's go sell t-shirts. We'll not make any money, but we'll help these kids, you know. And then you go, and then you have the whole process of selling and the rejection, which is always like hard. And as a kid is even more like, how come you don't care? It's like, I don't know, $10 t-shirt, just buy and you're giving to someone. But I think the whole process makes you grow a lot, and it's so uncomfortable until you get it right, you know.
I would like to transition a little bit, but it goes back to basically who you are as a person, what you did as a mid-teenager, and it is in my title, so I think it's important to bring it up. If you had to give advice, and I'm assuming you may mentor and do, but to teenage, I'm being very specific, teenage young women, girls that are interested in what's ahead of them in the world, looking at the future in the world of whatever it would be, finance, marketing, whatever important to them, or simply being an entrepreneur, what advice would you give them?
Go for it, like whatever you want, because the sky is the limit, and not even the sky. We saw like the NASA astronaut, like youngest one yesterday being announced, right? So it's just like we're living such a feminine era right now, and it feels so good to be a woman in business. It feels so good to be a woman in anything right now, you know. And we keep hearing like oh, that is hard and so on. Whatever, you know, like it's not like, if you decide that you make it, you always make it. And I think they're getting like so much more inspiration. That's another point. I think I became a fashion designer at a young age because the women I could admire, they were in fashion, you know. There's like very few very entrepreneurial women, you know. And then the ones I was seeing, I was like, oh, they're in fashion, I want to be like them. Like they seem like powerful, free, like they own their lives. And these days we have like, you saw Bumble IPO, and so like we have so many references that they can just get inspired. And that's another thing, like I would be very inspired by male leaders, and I think they don't need it anymore. Like they have all these women like leading by example, that they can just get inspiration and find their own way and create their own industries as well. So I think there's no limitations today. We have all the information, we have all doors open, and the world is connected. You just need to be bold. Like you can ask for anything, just start asking if you want, you know.
As a female entrepreneur, I'm assuming you face some challenges. How did you overcome them?
I still face a lot of challenges, you know. What I learned at the age I am now is I love the flow, and I have achieved quite a bit. So if you are not listening, in the sense you're almost being disrespectful to me, I'll not talk to you again. You know, whenever you're ready, reach out and we can do business together. We can discuss ideas. But if you're still looking down on me, just get over it. You know, like I don't have the time. I have like very little time these days to use for people that are still in the wrong mindset, you know. But that's today. Like before, I would do so much like to please people, were it like to co-invest with me, or even founders to accept me in their cap table and so on. It was just like such a hustle, and it would be very upsetting sometimes, I'll not lie. Like some nights I would just arrive home and I was like, wow, it will be always like this? Like, are people so blind that they just have like, they were raised in a way and they have a perception of the world that is so different than the world I'm seeing, and that's why they treat me like so poorly, you know? And I always had hope. I was like, no, we're not, you know, like let's just keep doing it and things will get better. And it got better, you know. And I think the most important thing in this whole path was learning to have empathy, even for the people that were very disrespectful, you know. Always trying to understand, like, where is this person coming from to be such an asshole, you know, and or a bitch, you don't know, it can be a woman or a man, because both of them can be very mean. And I always try to understand, like, where they're coming from. And then there was always a reason, you know, like they come from a different setup, like different ways, maybe less loving foundation, maybe a more greedy setup that it needed to be so competitive that they just prefer to take people out instead of empowering each other and so on. So it was just a matter of like, okay, I understand. I try to understand, and I'll just leave you there. One day, maybe we can reconnect and things will be better for us, you know?
I mean, if I just look at the math, there's definitely still challenges. So, what advice would you have for female entrepreneurs? This is the key part, looking to access capital markets. Because I think when I talk to younger female entrepreneurs and you look at the angel and VC numbers, access to money and investors and mentorship from that appears to still be very skewed against them.
Yeah, I have some advice on that. First of all, as a Latina VC, I'm part of 0% because Black women represent 1% of the VC decision makers, less than 1%, but like it's still like they make it 1% when you see the data. Latinas is like 0 point something something. So it's almost like if I didn't exist still, you know. So I know the data and how challenging can be. But there's two things. First of all, because there's still less women in the industry, there's one mistake that a lot of young women do, which is trying to connect with women to get mentoring when these women are still like fighting their own battles. So they don't have a lot of time to mentor and to advise. In the other side, like there's a lot of guys, and normally they have more time because their battles they already won just by being a guy on the time they were born. You know, it's like it's okay to first get advice from a lot of like male mentors, you know, because there's more of them. They have more time or availability. So I think that's one. And like, don't get, as a woman, young woman would say, don't get frustrated if other women don't answer you. Just try to think like that. Oh, they're probably super busy because they have like their battles, you know. And a lot. I don't have kids, but most of these other like women at my age, they already have kids and husbands. So besides all the business, they have a family to raise and so on. So always be mindful like that. Oh, it's not personal, you know, they have a lot going on there and they're making it easier for you. So just trust that. You might not see right now, but they're doing the path for you. So that's one. The second one is you need to do your homework because I always say like, oh, be bold, go to action, like ask. But if you go and you're not ready, and you'll never be fully ready, but you haven't done the work, that will be very disappointing for anyone you reach out to. And there's a lot of people doing that. And it's a pity because you go on the same crowd. Let's say if I receive 100 messages on LinkedIn and 90 of them were like those people that didn't do the homework, just like, oh, let me reach out and see what happens. And then there was like those 10 that were like very capable, that have been like working hard, but I got all those 100 messages at the same time. At the moment I get to the capable ones, my brain is fried and I don't feel like answering everyone anymore. And then the unprepared ones took the opportunity of someone that was so ready, you know. But there's nothing we can do about the unprepared ones. What I can do is like just do your homework and show up properly when you want advice, like show that you really care about the industry you are getting in, you know.
And in terms of, and I bounce around all over the place, but this relates to life as well, but it probably is a little more of an entrepreneurial question. There's basically three things you could do really with any situation that you're confronted with. You have a game plan, you're going to stay the course, nothing's easy, and there's nothing wrong with that. You pivot. And I look at all the companies from the earliest stages of Facebook, which was a completely different animal, building up in Harvard, kind of the like rating the women or whatever it was, became a completely different vehicle. So pivoting is important. Or the third one, and there's nothing wrong with this, if you don't have the passion or it's not a good opportunity for you, you start something, you have a vision for it, and then you realize it's not for me anymore, you quit. So you either stay the course, you pivot, and that's probably going to be the most common one to be successful, or simply you quit. What do you look for in especially younger entrepreneurs relative to, I have an idea, here's what I'm doing, it's not working as well as I would like it, I'm burning through money, do I pivot, do I quit? I mean, everyone's situation is going to be different, but how would you potentially give advice in that scenario?
Yeah, first, I really prefer to be more hands-on with a company when it's that type of advice, because it's such an important advice, you know. So if it's a company that I only did an angel investment, I'm not being very present, and I don't know what you're going through, I would ask them to ask advice for someone that is like more present on their daily activities, because my advice can come wrong, you know, I'm not that exposed. If it's a company that I'm really present, then I feel way more comfortable and like giving advice and pivoting and so on. And it's, as you said, it's case by case. There's companies that started for a reason in a certain timing that made sense, but it took too long to develop what they were thinking. And now would make sense to do it. And sometimes like 360, you know, going to a totally different business, like different skills, different like market and so on. But it still makes sense, you know, because that team has the capabilities and we still have cash and it would be strategic to do that. And there's passion, you know. So it's super like specific because I can think about a few cases that happened and the advice was totally different. But it's really understanding where the founder is coming from. And just back to your point, you need to be always reinventing yourself, you know, as a founder. So it doesn't need to be 100% of a pivot, but you need to be adapting. So one of the most important skills for a founder is to be resilient and adaptive. Like you need to be changing, you need to be adapting to the situations, a pandemic, whatever. Like there's so many things that will come to you and you just need to be ready like to adapt instead of just fighting, you know. And I think a lot of founders fight like what is coming to them instead of trying to understand and seeing how they take advantage of it. And the best founders, the ones that really thrive, they adapt, you know, like they know how to play it. So, and I know we're talking a lot about young, but I really care very little about age. And sometimes I ask age for people that are more senior and young. And the first thing I answer is like, I really don't care. I was just curious because some young kids, like they're so mature that I'm like, is this person like 30 or 15? I can't tell, you know? So I'm just curious, but it doesn't make any difference to me. And I think the young part of each person is in their souls. So I'm working with like one of our family members, he's like 74 years old and he has more energy than most of the kids I work with and he's more driven and like his next 30 years, he'll probably achieve more than he already achieved. And he's like, how does that even work? But it's the soul, you know, you have that spark and you have the energy. And because you have this spark, you have that energy. One feeds the other, you know. And I see young in age people like 13, 15, they're so old. It's like, oh my God, just go away. I can't deal with old energy, you know. I need the youth of souls.
Oh, for sure. So someone graduates college and, you know, not everyone's going to be an entrepreneur. So let's assume they want to have a more traditional position working at a company. Well, if their timing is now during COVID, a little bit more challenging, what advice would you have to someone, whether they were classically in business or finance, the arts, liberal arts, marketing, whatever it may be, entering the workforce where companies may not be hiring as much, where it's harder to make a face-to-face impression? What would you recommend to them?
Take as many opportunities as you can for free if you're not getting a job, like I mean unpaid, because you have the flexibility of being working remote. And if you really want a specific area, being VC, being whatever, like you just need to expose yourself to that. And the fact that you're working remote or studying from home as well, you have that flexibility. I see that with my team members, the youngest ones, like the past year, they grew so much. And because of course there's transparency, like they asked if they could be doing like other gigs other than just UMANA. And I was like, yeah, sure. And the way they learned during those experiences was fascinating for them and for me to see it. And I think that's what they can do today. And even like we did 2 fellowships last year, just like 3 months per fellowship, and talking to the kids that were with us last year and what they managed to get in terms of jobs and achievements just because they were exposed. It was amazing. And they, because of the debt, like because of like all the bills they need to pay because of college, a lot of kids these days are like, no, I need to get a paid job like right away, otherwise I can never make it. But because of the remote work, I would really, really emphasize, try to do a few gigs at the same time. And I really mean work, not just like learning remote, because you can get exposure to things you wouldn't, and you have that flexibility. But you need to hustle, you know, like it will be a phase of your life that you'll probably be exhausted, but it will be worth it, you know. So that would be my advice for the young entrepreneurial kids that can do more than one thing at the same time.
And related somewhat to that audience, but it could apply to someone at any age. They have a position, but it's not their life's passion. They're not necessarily going to build a tech company that's going to get angel and VC money. They kind of want to do a side hustle and make a business out of it. They want to be a creator. Examples could, and not spend a lot of money doing it. And this is what I talk about technically being profitable from day one. So imagine someone who's younger, who's fluid in marketing and social media, and they want to be effectively a social media marketer. Could they go to analog uh, businesses, dentists, doctors, etc., smaller accounting firms, and basically say your marketing's terrible, you don't know anything about what's going on TikTok? At 23, I may be too old for TikTok, they may say. So you make joke of it, but basically you're going to help to quantify that you're going to benefit them and potentially their business. And you don't need any equipment other than a computer to do that effectively. Okay, maybe you want to brand a website or something. You could do certain things for free. Maybe you're into fitness and you want to be an instructor. That's less scalable maybe than the social media, but in theory, it's possible to be an influencer, make money on Instagram, depending on how many followers you got, how to capitalize affiliate links from that. There's lots of things that people could do. I don't know if they get inertia, if they get afraid of like how they're going to do it, but what would you recommend to, again, not making the VC investment, but simply the side hustle type business, usually for someone younger?
Yeah, that's even better because I think these days it's so easy to make money as a young entrepreneurial person, you know, like as any person, but young because you still should have a little bit less traumas, you know, you can take way more chances without like all those things on your mind. Uh, it's easy, you know, if you are in tune with culture, with what's going on and the tools that we use these days, the examples you just described are great because as you said, I'm 32. TikTok for me makes no sense. And we need to deploy for all our brands. Who helps us with that? Like we keep filtering like a lot of Gen Z agencies to see like which ones to work with. And Gen Z agencies that the founders are like 23, like they're kind of old already. Like, can we find like 19s? Because the way they perceive it's totally different than the 23, 25 already. So there's like so many opportunities and there's data for everything. There's like all this following that can be built if you like really like data and you can be strategic, you know, like put the pieces together because it's an ocean of opportunities. If you have time, like there's so many ideas that you can come up with if you're in tune with what's going on. And I see a lot of like my best founder, I wouldn't say my best, but like one of my top 3 founders, he's 21 now. I met him when he was 16. He's just like amazing, like the way he was in tune with different industries and knowing like his passion and where he could add value. And it was very hard for him in the beginning because he would show up at 16 years old like in these setups which he was very knowledgeable, but people would look down on him and he thrived. And I think that's what you should be doing, just like being tuned, like know what you want to do and start testing, because the more you test, like the better you get financially and for your own personal growth, you know.
Now, a little challenge that I've had sometimes with what I would call the Generation Z, which I believe would be 22 or 23 and younger. I'll use a real life example. I'm interested in potentially initiating and building out a TikTok channel for what I do. Some of the traditional people I use, don't forget it, they're 26, 27, they're too antiquated. So I got introduced to a couple of 19 and 20-year-olds, 2 of them, we had a pretty significant discussion. And I'm like, okay, come back to me with some ideas and give me a quote. Well, guess what happened, Ba? And it's not like they're swimming in money. They're not. Of course, they never got back to me. Sometimes their communication, their follow through, and their professionalism is incredibly lacking. It's like a 1 on a scale of 10. Their intelligence, their perception of the world around them, wonderful. All of that is great. But some things from my generation that I would like to see, some level of promptness, dedication, commitment, discipline. I mean, maybe they're just not there yet given their age, but it's been a little frustrating for me.
I think on that end is like we need to adapt as well if we want to work with them. So like things I learned with working with kids that are less than 19 years old is, do you use email for real? Because it takes like 2 weeks for answering email, but then
They don't
by
even know what
DM,
email is.
Like if you DM, they answer like in 5 seconds, and it's like, oh, okay, so I need to use Instagram DM like to get the job done with you. Yes, that's it. Okay. Or like text message, that also works. And so like understanding like which tools and they will be so responsive, like almost like too fast. It's like because emails we kind of have a buffer, right? Like yeah, like maybe a few hours.
Well, the two I was talking about, it was through texting, but you're correct. Now, here's what I will say about what you're saying, where I sound a little bit like an old man. I get it. Is those people 19, 20, 21, 22, they're probably not going to change that much. Some of them will. They're going to eventually be their late 20s and 30s. They're going to be the employers, the entrepreneurs, and someone older, you're going to need to adjust to them because they're a big generation. Young millennials and Generation Z are tens of millions of people. They're coming into some level of success and affluence. They'll adapt a little bit. Things will change. But if people 35 and older don't adapt to them, and that includes in my community in the family office world, where younger generations are taking over, you will be toast. You'll be antiquated. You are correct. I need to adapt a little bit.
We all need. And it was frustrating for me when I started talking to them. I was like, and I don't like using Instagram, I'm like, fuck, I really prefer to delete and leave it out. So I don't waste time like checking anyone, I just stay out. It's distracting for me, but I understood that I need to use from time to time because of them. And it's the same for like as an employer, like you need to understand the needs of your people and if they fit the culture you're building. But if they fit the culture and you can adapt to what motivates them, it's fascinating because like the young millennials, as you said in the beginning, I had like such a hard time because as a hustler, I was always so committed to deliver and to show up. And I was so caring to anything. I would invite people to join me. And I didn't see that on them. And I was like, how come you can be so like up in the air? Like you show up, you tell me you do something and that you love it. And 2 months in, you're like, oh, this was not exactly my passion. It's like, what the fuck? Like takes years like to build something. But then I understood it's like, oh, if you have like 10 projects for them and they keep motivated by a lot of things at the same time, then you don't lose them because they're still discovering their passion and, oh, let me do this a little, let me do this. And then it's exciting and they don't leave. But before it was like super sad for me because you put so much time in someone, an employee, a team member, and then suddenly they just change their mind. And it's just because our world is so full of opportunities that if you don't understand where they're coming from, you lose them and will be your loss normally because they're brilliant. They just think very differently and their pace is different, so.
Very good comments. Let me bring another real life example in. I got approached by someone I know, male, age 20, smart, good college, worked since he was a middle-aged teenager, so showed gumption. And it's like, basically, Angelo, I'm taking finance and I kind of want to know what my future junior, senior next year, hopefully COVID will be past. It's like, okay, well, show me your resume. And I gave him an honest answer. Your resume is simple and proficient. It's boring. It looks like every other 20-year-old who's interested in finance. And you brought it up earlier, so I'm going to bring it up. I'm like, and I'm pretty fluent in it. Like what you're learning from older professors, it's nothing wrong with it. It's fine. You get a foundation. But I am telling you, this world is changing quickly. You don't know anything about digital assets and Bitcoin. And you're probably not going to learn it in college. You have to get self-educated because your professors are going to be from a different era. They're not going to understand it. They're going to think it's bullshit and magic, and they're completely wrong. You need to understand what's going on in Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. You need to know blockchain. You need to know NFTs, decentralized finance, and you're going to have to get self-educated on it. And that's going to give you an edge. Now, if I see that on your resume and I'm an antiquated MFO or RIA, you could breathe life into what I'm doing. I would be interested in you. So I didn't know this was going to become a Bitcoin conversation, but what do you think about the example I gave? And if that example, young and in finance, and you're ignoring things that are happening in the digital world, you are done. You're never going to make it.
Sorry, I muted myself because it was a noise, but I 100% agree with your advice to this person, because you need to, as I said, you need to be in tune with the culture, and maybe for finance or like agency, like marketing work, whatever it is, you need to be in tune. Like I recently joined like Blockchain Education Network as their CFO, as a volunteer work, and they have like chapters all over the globe, like creating like this chapters in high schools and colleges, universities. So it's fascinating for me to see like what can be done just by their own interests, because these chapters are built because they want to learn and they want to share the knowledge, and they want to put together like people that are like really, really excited about it, you know. And that's what it happens, you know, like you need to just be in tune and like learning. And I have like some of our team members that are in finance, and they did all the traditional path of going to banking and going to like the trades and so on, and they were not looking at crypto. And I was like, it's not allowed to be 21 years old these days and not know about crypto, you know. You need to, like, it's one of the advantages you have in the industry, you know. And just because you need to be in tune with like what the world is going through, like the decentralization is key. It's not only about like start buying some Bitcoin and Ethereum. Like you need to understand like this new wave. It's not a trend. It's like a really game changer for so many industries. And it changed them. Like now, like these team members, they invest in crypto, they understand the technology, they keep feeding me a lot of information of things that then I didn't know. So I think that's what people should always be doing, you know, like understanding like times we live in and connecting with that instead of just being blind, you know.
The power of community, building a network, whether it's traditionally, which is still valuable, whether it's locally, globally, and in today's world with social media platforms, the TikTok, the Instagrams, I would think this would be important. I'm from an antiquated industry. I'm adapting. I have moderately built out social media channels. Compared to my competitors, I'm miles above them, but I still have a lot of work to do. The importance of building and maintaining a network moving forward in the future, it's not less important. I think it's more important than ever. And the average person, not everyone's going to be an entrepreneur exiting for $100 million that's going to have 6, 7, 8 different careers, arguably in their lifetime. That's often going to come from the power of their network, their communication, and their capability from that. What do you think?
I think for the average person is as important as an entrepreneur. Like, and then again, going to the investment side of things, because average person normally creates limitations, you know, get less exposure to a lot of tools that make sense. And just because that's a human behavior, like if you're more entrepreneurial, you take more risks, you'll be more like checking 100 things. And if you're like more on a traditional path, you kind of like block yourself for some opportunities. But that should be the one that it should be even more open to opportunities, you know, because there's a lot going on and it's available to everyone. There's another app that I invested called Public. So for full disclosure, I'm an investor, but it's a social network for trading. And what happened with Robinhood was great for them because like they bring so much transparency and education that they're skyrocketing now. But the point is, it's about buying slices of stocks. It's about the social network aspect. So like what you asked about community, you should be building community in everything that you are interested in, you know. Of course, filter like the good community, so like you really engage with them. But Public is a great tool for me. Like I'm not very into capital markets, but because I do all value aligned investment, it's so easy for me to create my own community inside Public with other investors that only do value aligned investment, you know. So you start like easily connecting. The same with crypto, the same with, like, I love the future of food industry. So like lab grown food and plant-based. Yes. I'm vegan. So like there's just like so many communities that you just exchange ideas, learn, you feed each other like with information and with energy. That is so important. And I do think like collaboration and the like working collectively, it's the most important thing for like what is happening from here on. You know, before people were selfish, before people were just like doing their own thing and being greedy. It's not how it is anymore. Like that's why TikToks and stuff become virals, because it's about sharing. It's about like getting together even when you can't be together, you know. So community is key for me. I think you should build your own people, you know, your interests.
Absolutely. I'm going to ask you a question I've not asked a guest yet. I'm going to start to ask it more. I brought it up in a side hustles I did with my friend JJ Sowers, that's up on my YouTube platform. And basically, and this is going to come out of what we call left field, so you are unprepared for it, but I know you're good on your feet. Here it comes. Imagine I drop you off in a city that you don't know. You have nothing on you but your ID and $100 I give you. Your job, let's call it a reality TV show. Maybe I'll be with you in it. It'll be both of us. How about that? You're in one city, I'm in another. You have 24 hours. I don't care COVID or no COVID. You have 24 hours to get a job. What would you do to get a job? You only have a driver's license and $100.
I wouldn't get a job. I would do something for Instagram, like just advertise, or let's say would build, try to build like, I have knowledge about something, right? So I would just start sharing, because when you need, like that's something I would never do today, like educating people, because it would like take my time and like I need to focus on this and that. If I have absolutely nothing and I still have, oh, do I have an iPhone?
I'll be generous and say yes, but you have no place to sleep that night. So
That's
I'm assuming
okay.
if it's a city, you're probably going to need to find a shelter. So, I mean, you're in a tough spot here. I know you can't call your network and, you know, give me $10,000. No, you have to generate your own income and be supportive. And what you're doing, forget getting a job in 24 hours. Do you think you'd be thriving in 30 to 90 days?
Yeah. So if I have an iPhone, I would still go to like teaching something, because I think you can build like and you can be very charming like on the social medias, and then spend some of that $100, but be mindful, you know, on ads and see how it goes, and then like trying to spread. That would be the first one. If I had to be more offline, I would probably just buy a book, you know, and start knocking door by door and selling like a program, like a membership type of box of books, you know, like, oh, this is like one of my favorite books for entrepreneurs, and if you sign today, like will be a certain amount and you get it next month and so on. So I would build like some cash right away, you know, and then would buy the books for them and find like figure it out. But I think like simple things that you can do, or like I also like probably wouldn't have a driver. I would have a driver license, you said?
Yes.
Okay. So even like partnering up with an Uber, like getting just one ride with them, like, hey, I don't have a car, I just moved, like, can we split? I'll give you half of my revenue and so on. So like, there's very simple things you can just like jump in, but you need to ask. And if I were with like no network and wanted to do like the most entrepreneurial things, I would go like to the basic things. If I could just like really give myself some time and not be like, if I got the shelter, but I wouldn't work like that. I would first like take the risk and then worry about where I'm going to sleep, because probably in the journey of making it, I'll meet someone which will offer me a couch and so on. So that's normally how it goes, right? Instead of like, oh, let me get in a line, try to get a place in a shelter, maybe will not get, then I wasted all my energy in a place that I didn't want to be, instead of like putting my energy in building something and meeting someone interesting that would give me the opportunity for something else, you know?
Now, I actually did bring that question up to someone. I swear, sheer coincidence. They're here in Connecticut. They happen to be Brazilian. They're also a female. And what they basically said to it was, we have such a strong community bond, especially in certain communities, New York and others. What you just said about getting a place to sleep is like, I think I could do that in like 24 hours. Yeah. I'm not saying I want to be a mooch and stay there for weeks and weeks or months and months, but I could feel comfortable with the support of my community and me being proactive about it, getting a place to sleep. Many of them own restaurants. I'll simply wash dishes just to get $8, $9, $10 an hour till I get a little bit under my feet. Then I can make a decision a little longer term in terms of what I want to do. But I like the fact that, you know, you need to scramble and you're not relying on money or even your network per se and what you could do with it. We're about the top of the hour. I have a couple of more questions left. Are you okay with about 15 more minutes?
Yeah, so let's go for it.
Okay, let's go maybe a little bit of a rapid fire. So I'll kind of buzz through them a little quicker. What is the biggest help you would need to accelerate your business? What would you ask for? Put yourself in an entrepreneur's shoes. Besides money, here's no money. Besides money, what's the most pertinent thing they need for help to grow and scale?
Skills, right? So as a founder, you need to have the execution capacity of your trying to build. So I would just expect them to be ready, or expect them to learn like the tools they need to evolve, but that would be it. Like you just need, you need more skills than the money. The money comes if you have it.
Will rising interest rates stifle innovation due to the increased cost of raising capital?
I don't think so. I think it's our humanity has this thing of innovating, being always changing. So even if all the financing models change, I don't think we would get less entrepreneurial.
More and more VCs are launching SPACs. Will this continue?
Yes, I think so.
It definitely appears that way. What recommendations would you have, given that you're an angel and a VC investor, to entrepreneurs that are approaching those kind of investors, from their approach, their presentation, when they may get that, here's my deck, and now they're called in, they get 15 minutes. What's the most common mistake you see, and how could they improve it?
They not reading the guidelines. They don't know how we operate. So just there's so many articles of how many slides should have your deck, what type of problem, solution, market, blah, blah. It's so simple what we want to see. And founders insisting doing their own way. And then it's an easy pass for most of investors, because you're not even doing your homework of what is important in a pitch deck and in a pitch in person. So not worth it. It shows you don't care about following some rules, and making it easier for you. So that's the first one. Just know the guidelines and then follow them, because we'll make your life easier.
And in terms of how could I kind of phrase it? I'm thinking of a way. I guess there are challenges from the perspective of how to improve access to angel and VC money for underrepresented minorities. You mentioned one that you're a part of. I'm half Latino. We would be a great example of it. It is harder per se, but we can't make excuses. You hinted at it earlier, but what would be ways they could maybe get a little more traction?
I do think it's more about mapping the right investors. I do think if you're good, if you have these skills and you have a great idea and the project is promising, go to the right VC or the right investor for that industry. I think a lot of Latinos and minorities, they focus too much on there's now this VC that only invests in minorities, so we'll talk to them. And then there's just I don't know, 15 of them, while you have thousands of other VCs. And then if you are a biotech company or a crypto company or so on, just map the right investors, forget who you are physically, and just go for it, because you get the network. And I think those are the founders. And I have some Latinos and other minority founders in my portfolio. The ones that are in our portfolio, they never approached us as, oh, I'm a minority and I think we'll click because you were a minority and so on. Normally the ones that do that, they don't have great ideas, they just try to connect in a personal level. Mm-hmm. And I can be very nice on a personal level and still pass the investment because it made no sense,
Yeah, of course. Now it depends on what kind of investment you're doing, deep tech, et cetera, but do you generally prefer or have no preference for a solo entrepreneur versus one where there are several founders?
I normally prefer teams. We do have solo founders, which we admire very much. I think they're very special of being able to do that. But we like teams because of collaboration. It's good to have someone you can rely on. Solo founders, they have great relationship with their early investors because they need more advice and support, and that's okay, But I do think teams, especially duos. I love duos. I love duos. When it's three, it's okay. You see companies with more than three, it's interesting. Like I think it's a lot of people more than three, but it works sometimes, you know. So, but my passion is like duos. I think duos, like they create like this brotherhood, like they become siblings, you know, and it's so cool to see.
You went from being an entrepreneur engaged as an employee in the world of finance to becoming, among multiple things, still entrepreneurial and being an earlier stage investor. There's lots of misses. The time to exit may be a long time. You have time on your side. What do you love most about what you do? And how do you do it so well? It's not an easy business.
I love entrepreneurial people. I just love it. When I decided to focus on venture and impact investing, and now like also wealth management, it's all about the people I work with. And that's why I told you it's easy like to pass on people that are not connecting, because I don't have the time to not be having fun and joy with the things I'm doing these days. So the beauty of entrepreneurial people is that they're so optimistic, they're so innovative, you know, they see no boundaries, like they're always like trying to find a way instead of like showing all the problems that they can face, you know, and that's very exciting for me. And then if you are, I think my main passion is not only the entrepreneurial folks, but like the entrepreneurial caring folks, which is like a new layer that I can see some leaders being ready to lead in a very caring way. And that's beautiful for me. And I hope it's like the new wave, you know, that you care about everyone you employ, that you care about building a culture of looking for each other, instead looking and being support for each other, instead of just building a business, you know, and focusing on numbers. I think you can do both very well.
It's one of my Tim Ferriss-like questions, but to people that are successful, I'm intrigued by it. Do you have a routine? Do you get up at a certain time? Do you do journaling? Do you meditate? Do you exercise? Do you do analytical work more in the morning, creative work more in the afternoon? Tell us a little bit about what your typical day would look like, Ba.
Routine is very important for me. And I didn't have for years as a founder. I think you can get lost sometimes. You start working too much and traveling and so on, and you don't stick to it. And it was, I think my past 4 years was the years I achieved the most, and it was thanks to having like a very solid routine. So I'm on my best of my routines these days. Like I wake up every day at 3:30 a.m. because I want at least 3 hours for myself. So I meditate. Like first thing is like 20 minutes of transcendental meditation, TM. Then I do yoga. Then I do some cardio, can be run, can be like weights, whatever it is, but I need that time. And I love dancing. So those hours for me are like the mind, body, and spirit. And then I journal and have my visualization board. I don't know if anyone like those things, but I believe immensely on that since I started doing my vision boards. I think because I see that my goals are way bigger than myself. They're not selfish. They're not like a car, you know. They are things that I think will make the world better. I think that inspires me in the morning, and I know I should get it going, you know. So that's very important for me in the morning routine. Then I eat, like there's like that expression, eat the frog. So first thing in the morning, before any emails, before anything, like I need to do the most challenging task of my day, the task that normally I would postpone. Then I'm like, no, like let's do the boring thing because my energy is like very high right now, and I'll do it. I also follow like a keto vegan diet. So my energy levels are pretty high with all this like coconut oil and coffee and so on. So I sleep very little.
Very popular
and I have
now,
like this,
I know.
I have this energy that never ends, and it's good. But before I would have like lows and downs of energies. So like that's why I stick with this diet, because it treats my body so well, you know. And a lot of people don't like, and that's another thing about having discipline. People have so many opinion about your own lifestyle, like, oh, you shouldn't wake up at 3:30, like we're sleeping too little, you shouldn't drink this coffee. It's like you hate yourself. And like, so people have a lot of opinion when you find your way and you have discipline. And my advice is just like, do your thing, like listen to your body and see how you feel. And that's what matters. Like everything else or any article or diet, wherever you want to follow, test and listen to your body, and then we'll find it. But those are my routines. And then at night, I unplug 9 p.m. I normally do a bathtub, like not cold baths like a lot of people do, or sauna. I just go to like a warm bathtub to unplug because my mind can be restless. And then I read a book that is not related to business, normally like something with meditation. I'm in a phase that is very spiritual. So like I'm always like trying to read something about consciousness, awareness, and that will just get me thinking, but will not get me a hyper of like, I need to do more work, And then I journal a little bit more at night and boom, go to bed.
Yeah, I mean, my comment about that, my audience probably knew it was coming. And Tim Ferriss gets often similar type comments from his guests who are successful, like Ba. They absolutely, and the routine may change and should, because sometimes it could get a little boring and we need to adapt, but they almost all practice some form of meditation, deeper thinking, less interruption to their day, not being reactive to incoming phone calls and texts, but looking at it at certain times of the day, and just being very careful with their time so they could be more, they could make better decisions, I guess you could say, with less interruptions. And it's something, a process for them to follow to get to the outcomes that they want. So maybe something we could all learn from. Bob, for those that would like to learn more about your businesses, you have a family office, you're active as an earlier stage investor. How could they learn more about that?
Wow, there's a website, umana.family. Umana means human in Italian, so it's UMANA.family. And that's the family office. Of course, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Instagram. Like if anyone wants to connect, it's Minuzzi. So happy to connect. Like if anyone really wants to connect, I would suggest send me a message right now, because it can get very busy, those LinkedIn requests. And then if I didn't click right away, I just leave in that list of people trying to connect, So if there's real interest, like happy to chat. And yeah, that's it. Like here to help, here to serve.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, like you said, the social media has been a great way to connect, and that's Ba, as in BA, last name Minuzzi. So it's wonderful. It's been great to have you on. I haven't seen you in a long time. Hopefully next time in person. I do a bit of a close. It takes about 90 seconds, but just be a little patient. I'll try to run through it. Well, everyone, I'm Angelo Robles, host of the Angelo Robles podcast. And as I mentioned, founder and CEO at Family Office Association, a global membership organization dedicated to successful investors, families of success, and their family offices and foundations. Our website's very comprehensive. It's easy to learn about what we do and join. It's familyofficeassociation.com. My direct email is angelo@familyofficeassociation.com. And I'm very active on social media as well. I used to be most active on LinkedIn, and I'm still pretty active on it, but I've been a little bit more focused on other platforms like Instagram, where we're Family Office Association, and by far the one I give in the most attention to. And I really want to grow, so go and subscribe. I promise we have good content, too much of it for free, but that's my YouTube platform. And years ago, when YouTube was first formed, I'm lucky to have a great name relative to what we do in the family office world. It simply is Family Office. So I am Family Office on YouTube. Go and subscribe. We have amazing interviews, some of them multi-hours long, with some of the deepest investors and creative thinkers in the world. It's been a blast. So we look forward to you doing that. And Ba, it's been tremendous again having you on. I very much look forward to the next time.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Bye-bye.